Hi guys, in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to animate a character. So keep in mind you're going to have to download a character rig online. You can either purchase it or you can download one for free. So normally the purchased ones are more advanced. So mine is a purchased rig, so you can go down below in the description and find it, and it has certain features that make animating easier. So I'm going to be using my rig, and I will also link you to a free download rig which should normally have less features than a purchased rig. So yeah, let's get started. I'm going to delete the rig I just made here and load in my default rig over here, and let's stop the timeline like this and let's move it into position. So let's move it up like so, and move him into the position I want him. So keep in mind in this tutorial I'm going to be skipping ahead a lot, like maybe time-lapsing the video, I guess, because animation does take some time. So on points where I'm not speaking, I shall speed it up. Okay, so he's probably not in the correct position, so let's move this to 7,000 like so, and now he's on the correctly positioned. Keep in mind you should first watch the tutorial on how to use my rig, so I'll link that down below in the description, because there's tons of customization features and all that stuff in the rig, and it would be advised if you watch that tutorial so you can use it to the fullest potential. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is to figure out what FPS we're running in the viewport. It's important to know that we're running real time, otherwise if you animate everything and then you render it out, it'll appear really fast in the final render. So to do that, we need to go into options, configure, and then go to HUD over here and select frames per second, and then as you can see it gives us the FPS, but make sure you first hit play and then it'll give you the approximate FPS. So hit play over here, this button, and then it's running at 40. So to be safe, I'm just gonna hit Control D on my keyboard, and this will give me my project settings, and here I can change the FPS. Okay, so keep in mind if you change this FPS, it's not going to change the final render FPS, it's only going to change the viewport FPS. So to be comfortable, I normally set at 15, always half what the final render FPS is going to be. So if you say 24, you would put it at 12 or something like that. So that's how I like it, so you're free to mess around with that. So just for safety, as you can see I'm running at 40 FPS, I'm just going to put it at 15, and now we don't have to worry about not being in real time when we're animating. So as we change this FPS, you can see that the timeline also changes, so that when we change it to 15, every 15 frames is equivalent to 1 second. So when we change it to 30, every 30 frames is equivalent to 1 second. So that's how that works. First of all, let's go ahead and extend the timeline. So to do that, we just hit just change it over here, so you can move this up and down, and then move this on the side, and then we have all this space to work with on the timeline. So a quick side note, I have a 1060 GTX, but my computer doesn't seem compatible with Cinema 4D. So people have been saying that my rig runs at 200 FPS with a 970, and with my 1060 I'm only getting 40 FPS. So currently my GPU system is not running Cinema 4D properly, so just keep that in mind while I'm animating. So before we start animating, we want to lock our background objects, because we can accidentally select them and they also get in the way. So what we would do is to select all of these like so, and then right click. So these are all the background objects. Right click and then go to add to new layer, and that will create a new layer. So this is the layers manager, and we can like move this to top or whatever, and move this here, and then we can name this like say set, and then we can lock it. You can even hide it, or you can off it in the render, or just remove it from the object manager. Okay, so my character has a feature where it's going to lock the layer by just selecting this and pressing Q. So now I can only select the controllers. So that's called animate mode. Okay, so let's go ahead and start our first pose. So we're going to ignore the facial control for now and just animate the body and do the face later. So I have this thing called a visual selector right next to my rig here. If you double click it, it'll give you these all the controls by if you just click on the body, it'll give you the controllers like so. And so let's just select all of them like so. So this is all the body controllers, the head controls are all in here. So let's select all of these and then go to the frame 0 in the timeline and then click on keyframes. So that's going to record all the positions of the body, because we selected the body controllers. And yeah, so keep in mind I'm going to be using a shortcut key, which is Shift C, and that'll this is only on my computer. I set it to Shift C, the shortcut key. You can always do that. Just watch my tutorial on how to add shortcut keys. So I'm going to be able to like put keys into the timeline with my shortcut key. So I suggest you also make one. Okay, so now that we keyed all our body components on frame 0, if we move up in the timeline and we move the arm, you see it just plops back into position. We need to have auto key on. So this is auto keying. This will automatically add keyframes if we move it. So say I move it here and I move it, so it'll automatically put another recorded keyframe on frame 9, and then if you move that, if you move between 0 and 9, it's going to add that keyframe. So yeah, it's good to have auto key on, otherwise you're going to have to always be keyframing every time you move something. Okay, so with auto key on, we're going to make our first pose on frame 0. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so keep in mind my rig has this option called Smart Move, so the arm moves around with the body. So your rig probably might not have this, so just keep that in mind when I'm animating. Now we have our first pose here. So now we need to just move ahead in the timeline. Don't worry where it is. I would just suggest going every 6 frames for now, and then we can do the timings later. So let's move to this frame 6 and do our second pose. Now that we've done our second pose, you can see he's now moving into that, like so. And now let's go into our third pose, so frame 12, and let's do that. Okay, so now let's make our fourth pose, so that's on frame 18. So keep in mind each dot here represents a frame. So this is like the shadow of the object I've selected, so that's the body. So you can use it as like a reference to how fast the object is moving. So yeah, and I'm gonna use it to map out the speed of him falling and everything. You'll see that later. Okay, let's now make the fifth pose. So let's move this down. Now let's make our sixth pose when he is landing. So now I've done all the poses, so let's quickly run through this and see how crappy it is. It's normally going to be really crappy. There we go, it's really crappy. So now we need to add the extra keyframes that would make this look at least a little better. So let's do that. So let's go to frame 0. And the first thing we obviously noticed is that his legs take off before he jumps. So let's go ahead and fix that. So here's a very important tip. So as you can see here, his legs leave too early. So we want his legs to stay on the ground. On frame 8, it has to be the same position as on frame 0, where he's getting ready to take off. So what we would do is we could either copy the keyframe like this, copy and paste it here, or we can just go to the area we want to like keyframe it. Like so, frame 0, we want it to be this same position. So we hold Control. And now on frame 8 we click, hold Control, and frame 8 we click, and now it'll copy what's the positions and everything on frame 0 to frame 8. So now, as you can see, it doesn't move. So yeah, that's how you do that. So another thing is, so we're on frame 12 and we want this position to be the same on frame 4. We can do that. So let's hold Control and press on number 4. And now if you go on frame 4, as you can see, it's in the same position. So it's basically copying and pasting keyframes made easier. Okay, so the first thing we want to ensure is that the body is moving at the right speed. So then we can start animating the leg. So as you can see, it gets slower here. So it jumps and then it gets slower here, but then it moves really fast here. That's like too fast. So as you can see, yeah, that's a little too fast. So what we would do is we would move the keyframes a little bit further apart. So let's copy and paste. Actually, we need to select all the objects of the rig so that we don't accidentally move keyframes. So that we need to move all the keyframes. So yeah, so let's do that. So let's move this a little bit to the side, and now he should jump a little, fall a little slower. So that's a little too slow. So now let's move this like here. Actually, right there. So that's looks about right. Okay, so now we can go ahead and fix the legs. Okay, so now we got the legs moving in the right way, so now let's fix the arms. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete all the keyframes for the arms because I kind of messed it up. But yeah, it's all about making mistakes, and then you just learn from it, and then you just become better and better as an animator. So this sort of thing is normal, even for an experienced animator. So keep in mind, animation is all about practice and observation. So you need to keep observing what's happening around you. I know that might sound difficult for some people, but yeah, that's how you kind of learn how animation works. You need to observe how people move, how they walk, how they jump, how physics works, and then you'll kind of understand how everything is put together in animation, and you'll understand what looks wrong and what looks right. So that's how. Okay, so now as you can see, I've animated the legs and the arms, but the landing is kind of slow, so it needs a little bit of tweaking. So how I would tweak that is by selecting, say, the arms and the body, like so, and maybe making it a little faster so we can like move around keyframes. So this part we want it to bend down a little quicker, so it either move around keyframes or just keep tweaking it a little bit by bit. How about I just grab all these here and just move them a little bit closer, and this should, yeah, that's about right. So I'm gonna work with that, and now we can go ahead and add the animations for the fingers. So let's do that. Okay, so as you can see, I've animated the fingers as well. So now we can go ahead and animate the facial controls. So the cool thing about my rig is that it makes facial animation really easy, and you can do a lot of expression with just one controller. So for example, if I move this around, it's going to move the head, like it's going to rotate it, and that would take a lot of time to manually animate all those things, like the eyelids moving, you can see, and the eyebrows moving with the eyelids and all that stuff. So same with the blink, you can see it's moving the head up and down as well, and yeah, so and even the jaw movement and everything. So it's very handy to have a good rig, and it definitely optimizes your workflow. So now I'm going to click on this object here and press Q, and that's going to actually attach the user data to the camera. So this is another cool feature in the rig that makes it really easy to animate with. So my rig also has this option of lowering the quality of the mesh. So if I move this up, you can see the quality of the head increases. So this rigid look becomes smooth. So that's increasing the subdivides, and lowering it will increase the FPS. And then if I hit Q, it's actually going to get rid of the facial controls. And same with the body. If I hit Q, it's going to get rid of the high quality mesh and replace it with a low quality mesh. So if I show you the wireframe, so you can see it's very limited. So if I now enable the mesh, the high quality mesh, you can see there's a ton of polygons. And if I enable this, there's also a ton of polygons happening over there. So I'm going to disable this. Actually, I'll keep it on because my computer can handle it. And then also I have, let me just turn on, okay, I also can turn off this controller here by clicking on this thing. And then the facial controls, the manual controls are here, like so. And then I can like manually control things. Keep in mind in the render, it's going to look a lot better. And then I can turn it off by pressing Q. And then I have the body controls that I can turn off, which I am gonna leave off now. And yeah, so let's go ahead and start animating. So it's the same principle as animating body controls. So we can start like by keyframing the first position, like maybe make him look a little scared, because let's do that. And like this, looking down and like looking all scared. And then we can move to frame 6. And he's like opening his mouth, and maybe he blinks and something like that. And then yeah, so I'm gonna quickly animate all this and come back. So as you can see, I was able to add a ton of emotion to the face in just a few short moments because of my facial controller features and stuff. So I highly suggest to check out my rig. So yeah. So next I want to go over the timeline. So I'm going to click on window and open up the timeline. So this is what you use to smooth out your animation. And I always use this to manage my keyframes. I don't use this much, but I do like to have it as a reference point. So yeah, so let's go ahead and grab in the objects we're moving in our rig. So let's just double click the visual selector. Select all the body components and the user data components, and let's just drag it in like so. And so this is the summary, and if I move the summary, it's going to move all the keyframes. So if I say like move this, it's going to move all. If I select all the other things, so they can individually select and move other keyframes. So this is a very easy way of organizing and making sure your timings are right. So I suggest you always have this on, say, a second monitor or something, and use, well, it's really big, okay, and use it as a reference. So the next thing you want to know is the F-curve mode. So if I select F-curve mode, you can see the movement in the different axes. So if I go on to the main body, so that's the body that we animate, and you can select the different positions and stuff, so position and rotation. So I'm going to select all three positions, so hit shift and select, and as you can see the y-axis, which is the green line, this is the x-axis, the red line, and the z-axis. So as you can see, when he jumps, you can see the y-axis is shaped like that. So we can make it smoother, of course, by like doing something like this and just smoothing it out a little, and then this is about right. So the jump sequence this is quite all right. Maybe if we hold shift, click on this and hold shift, and just move this up a little. So if you don't hold shift, it's going to move both sides. So let's hold shift and just move this up a little. So that's how a jump normally is shaped. So yeah, that might have helped a little. And then the z-axis, we could like drag this out a little further, and that would help. So, and then if you want to add actually that made it worse. Anyway, if you want to add a keyframe, so you just hold control and click on the line, and it shall add a keyframe. So as you can see, now it's moving on the z-axis. So as you get better and better with animating, you'll be able to organize your keyframes better. So for example, I would be able to like know to delete this, and then add just a key, do like this, and like move this up, and then maybe do something like this, and then yeah, and get the same effect. So yeah, so it's all about just managing your keyframes and getting a smooth and nice effect on your animations. So also keep in mind you can have different structures for your splines. So if I say select these and I go and click on linear, so this will make everything linear. So it makes it like really robotic, I guess. It doesn't have any ease ins and ease outs. It always has just one straight velocity. So that's what that does. And if I click on step, it's just going to immediately step to the next position and the next keyframe. So it's not going to have any easing or nothing at all. No movement. It's going to teleport and stuff. Yeah. So then this spline mode is the normal mode where you can adjust the keyframes. And then we have these other controllers here. So this is what makes things smooth. This one here. This is what makes things, I think, speed up, like slow and then speed up and then slow again, and this is speed up, slow, and speed up. So yeah, it's up to you. You have to kind of mess around with it to understand. And yeah, okay, so I forgot to mention, you need to set your FPS back to 30 and then double check if there are any tweaks that are needed in the character animation, because sometimes in between keyframes that can be a weird bug or something, I don't know. But yeah, it's always advised to set it back and double check. And if you're not running in real time, you can always do hardware render. So right now it's really slow. So if I click on the render settings and go to hardware render over here and say, actually we need to also make this all frames, and you can set your aspect ratio or whatever. I'm going to set the resolution to 800. And make sure you lock the aspect ratio if you want to see the same aspect ratio. Okay, so now I'm going to set the resolution to 450p. So you can always lock the resolution like so it'll always stay the same ratio. So now we don't need to save it. And I always advise enhanced OpenGL, reflectance, and like anti-aliasing around 4. And now let's hit render. So click on this button. So this should not take long at all. Because it's a hardware render, and it'll only render what you see in the viewport. So, okay, so now we get to see our animation in 30 FPS real time. And yeah, so this is used if you don't have a strong GPU system, but if you have a strong GPU system that allows you to run everything in real time in your viewport, you don't need hardware renders. So yeah, that's always a good thing to have. Okay, so that concludes this tutorial. If you have any questions, just leave them down below. If you want me to clarify more things about, say, the timeline or whatever, just let me know down below as well. And yeah, in the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the camera. And yeah, stay tuned. See you in the next tutorial.